Say, light of Christ is shining down. It's beautiful. Sung by the second best looking preacher's wife in our district, I would say. You're supposed to tell my wife I said so, okay? Have y'all had fun? Yes. You enjoyed it? Well, that's all about to change. A couple of you have said that you've shared the story about sleeping with pigs, they'll eat you. A couple of you have said that you've said that. Would anybody like to share in what circumstance or in which way that you've talked? For those of you who weren't here last night, we talked about the prodigal son. In the story of the prodigal son, we talked about that the pig in that story really represented everything that was broken and wrong and sinful and bad about this young man's life. And how he longed to even just stay with them and eat their food. And had he done that, he would have died forever, because a pig will eat you. A pig will eat you. Did you know that? A pig will eat anything. You don't want to sleep with a pig. You do not want to fall asleep with a pig, because a pig will eat you. And so it is with our own lives, our spiritual lives. The guilt that we bear, the burdens that we hold on to, the sinfulness that we always remember we never forgive ourselves of, or the anger, the bitterness that we hold against other people. Those are just the pigs in our lives. If you sleep with them, they will consume you. They will take everything that is good and right about your soul, and they will just destroy it. You had an occasion to tell that story to someone? You don't want to sleep. Would you like to share? Anybody would like to share? I want to get some sharing tonight. No? Anybody?
Well, my secretary said today that she had slept with many pigs.
Oh, she did? I don't see your secretary. She's not going to admit herself. That's why I told her. You're safe. You're safe. Don't tell. No one here is supposed to tell us. Okay, you didn't.
Do you know what a razorback is?
What's that?
Do you know what a razorback is?
A razorback.
Yes.
So wild boar or wild
boar, he'll cut you up and then eat you.
That's right. He sure will. Vicious. They'll pursue you. Then eat you. Yes, indeed. I was sitting with an older man today who was waiting for his wife to come out of surgery. And he's been retired for many, many years now. But he was talking about the company that he had worked for and how badly they had treated him. He worked for the same company that his dad worked for. And his dad just did so well. And he was loyal to the company like his dad had been. He worked hard for the company like his dad had done. And he was just bitter and angry. I don't know, maybe 17 years now he's been retired. And he's still very upset. Not just with the company, because that would be easier to be upset with, but I mean with specific people he will not speak to. Friends, lifelong friends of his and his dad's that he won't speak to anymore. And I said, that's a pig that'll eat you. That's something that you're holding on to, that it might be time at this point in your life to give over to God and let God handle that and to make some reconciliation. And he didn't want to hear that, but we'll follow up with that again a couple of weeks after his wife's surgery is over with and all that other stuff. Well, good. Now I have another question for you. I really do want some sharing. I wonder if someone were to ask you, well, okay, I know you go to church, you want me to go to church with you and all, that's well and good, I might just do that. But first I want to know what it is about God that you believe. If someone put you on the spot like that and said, what is it about God that you believe that's so important? What about this God? What would you say? What do you believe about God?
All loving.
What? I'm sorry?
All loving.
All loving.
He answers your prayers.
He answers your prayers.
He's my creator.
Creator.
He's there when you need him.
There when you need him.
Forgiving.
Forgiving.
He's blessed me with my family.
Blessed me with my family.
He's a healer.
He's a healer. Shows love each day and more as you get older. You see it more and more all the time.
Everything comes from him.
Everything comes from him.
He's good.
He is good.
He just is.
He is.
So many people don't believe that.
That's right.
He's a forgiver.
A forgiver. Now, why is it that you want me to go to church with you? They said. You invited me to church. You believe that God is. He's loving. He's kind. He's good. He forgives. Why do you want me to go to church? So you can experience it.
Because I care about you.
Because I care about it. I want you to turn with me to Matthew chapter 9 tonight, okay? I think it's verses 19, somewhere around here. Let's see. 19, 20. A couple of short readings. 29, I'm sorry. Matthew 9, verses 29 and 30. And I'm going to read from a little bit of a different translation, because every now and it's not even a translation, it's a paraphrase of the Bible. The Message, if you guys, you're shaking your heads. Some of you are familiar with the Message. Eugene Peterson, a Canadian theologian, sat down and first started with the New Testament and just wrote it in his vernacular. And he's, you know, for being a Canadian, he's as country as I am sometimes. I mean, he sounds downright hick. Who? Is that right?
Does he say A a lot? She does.
Well, not in here. But let me tell you, I had an occasion to go and hear him speak one time in North Carolina. And I was so excited about sitting at the foot of the Master. You know, it just done such a beautiful, the most boring speaker I've ever heard in my life. I thought, well, you know, some people can write. That's right. Okay, so chapter 9. Beginning with verse 20 now. Jesus had been at the house of a local official and had been summoned to his house to heal his daughter who was sick. And on the way there, he was interrupted by a woman who was also sick. She'd been hemorrhaging for a very, very long time. And he eventually made it to this local official's house, and he raised this child from the dead. And then, this passage, at least the way Peterson has it, says this. As he left the house, that's whose house he was leaving, he was followed by 2 blind men crying out, "Mercy, Son of David, mercy on us." When Jesus got home, the blind men went in with him. And Jesus said to them, "Do you really believe that I can do this?" They said, "Why, yes, Master." He touched their eyes and said, "Become what you believe." It happened. They saw. Precious Lord, may you add every word and every thought that needs to happen tonight as we think about your precious word. Remove me from this body and let it simply be your vessel, that it might speak words of challenge to some, comfort to others. In Christ's name, amen. First came across this passage as I was preparing for, and unwittingly so, preparing for a conference that I was to speak at. It was a conference of salespeople for a secular business, not religiously oriented. A church member, though, belongs to the business, or is an employee of the business. He's actually come and give a little spiritual pep talk, I guess, to the salespeople of his company. And had all my notes and my video presentation all ready to go. And I was, you know, all decked out in my suit and tie and hair slicked back, and I was ready to go. And I headed out there, and nothing worked. I got there early enough, thank goodness, because I could adjust, because the technology didn't work, and the place where I was in just didn't work. It didn't, you know, there weren't pews all neatly lined up for me and that kind of thing. It was just, everything about it was awkward. I felt so out of place and unsure. The president of the company, since I was there a little bit early, stopped me and he said, "I want to talk to you a little bit before you do your talk tonight." So he pulled me aside and he said, "I want to tell you about my father-in-law." And I thought, oh great, here we go. A little pastoral counseling session. Yeah, you need to be nice to the old man, is what I guess I was going to have to say. You know, that's a standard advice. Yeah, you got to be nice to him. But this is what he said instead. He said, back many, many years ago, my father-in-law used to have a peculiar way of fishing. had never heard of this. Have y'all ever dynamite fish? That's the strangest thing I've ever heard in my life, but that's what he did. You've been dynamite fishing. Apparently hardware stores used to sell sticks of dynamite. You could go down to the Lowe's and buy that stuff. I couldn't believe that. That's what happened. I guess they didn't have Lowe's back then, but the hardware store sold them. He'd go, and he was known for it. His father-in-law, he said, was just an energetic, creative, hard-working man. Everybody loved him, loved to be around him. You could always call on him, and he'd come up with a solution, and he'd work that solution through. He was the best neighbor you could ever ask for because he was always helping. And he was very loyal to the company that he had been working for, which was in the oil and gas business. He said a couple of executives came through from the oil and gas company and said, would you take us fishing the way you fish? We want to see the way you fish. Would you do that? So he said, sure. So he took them fishing. And he got on his boat, lit up a cigar, with the cigar, lit a stick of dynamite, threw it in. It creates some sort of vibration that confuses the fish, I guess. And they start floating up close to the top. And all you have to do is scoop them into the boat. And they were having a great time. You ever heard of it? Yeah. That is just, well, it's cheating. But I mean, you know. I mean, that's the kind of fishing that even a terrorist could get into. You know, you got to admit it's creative. So they were enjoying themselves until an ember from the cigar fell into the dynamite on the boat. They tried to get rid of it as it was light, they were throwing it out, and fish were coming up all around it. There was one that went off in the boat. Rushed into the hospital. He was the only one injured. And after many days in the hospital, he said, my father-in-law came to the realization that he would never be able to see again. Completely blinded for the rest of his life. He said it was such a tragedy to see this very energetic, vivacious, creative man that everybody relied on and looked up to just go into a pit of despair. He said it was almost like it wasn't just his sight that had exploded in that boat, but his very being, his very soul had left him. He went home and he just kind of spent his days in his home until his wife one day came to him and said, honey, I don't know what we're going to do. He said, I know, I'm just out, I can't see. She said, I'm not talking about your blindness. I'm talking about our back steps. The old wood on the back steps is just rotting out. And somebody's going to hurt themselves. It might be me, it might be one of the kids, it might be one of the grandkids. Somebody's going to get killed on those back steps. I don't know what we're going to do. So that day, he got up and he went out into his workshop. And he dusted off the cobwebs and the dirt that had been on his tools for sitting there for far too long. He got out some old scrap pieces of wood and began cutting angles, thinking, remembering how it felt to create, and how it felt to put things together and make things happen. And he created out of that wood, not steps, but a form. Placed them together so that the form could be taken apart. And in the form, he put concrete. And he let it set real good. He took the form apart, and he put the concrete steps on his back door, at his back door. This man's name was Mr. Como. He lived in Sulphur, Louisiana. You've ever heard of him? Mr. Como's neighbor saw and said, you made those steps? He said, sure did. I made this form. He said, well, I'm going to borrow your form. And he borrowed the form, and he made some for his own steps. Some other neighbors saw it. Before you knew it, he was selling concrete steps with this form that he had made to people all over Sulphur. He couldn't keep up with the demand. It came such that he had to get his son-in-law to begin helping him make the concrete steps. And eventually they went from concrete steps to other things that are concrete. Some of which I bet if you cross a railroad track, you've passed over today. Concrete trestles that instead of the old creosote wood ones that hold better. They began creating concrete blocks so that cars wouldn't run onto the grass when they go to park at a grocery store. They created all kinds of concrete things. And he said, do you know that this company now that you're about to speak at, these salespeople that you work for Mr. Como, who started this concrete company, it's called Century.